Refuge Church. I've been on a little bit of a sabbatical, but I am back and ready to jump into Judges chapter 13 with y'all. I'll pray and kick us off. Lord God, King of the universe, I thank you that we have the opportunity to look at this text from across time and space and be together and find some treasures of you within it. I pray that you would be with me as I speak, that my words might come out smoothly and correctly, and that you would be with everyone listening, that we might find this text life-giving and instructive and helpful, and that we might leave this time looking more like you. I pray all of these things in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so I'm going to read and then pause and editorialize. Read, pause, comment, etc. You get the idea. So feel free to read along in your own translation. This is mine. Judges chapter 13. Again, the sons of Israel did evil in the eyes of Yahweh, and Yahweh gave them into the hand of the refugees for 40 years. Okay, so context here. This is the book of Judges. So often we're taught that it goes back and forth between the people doing right and the people not doing right? Puns. But here it doesn't just say that they forgot to follow God or they weren't praying enough or any of those, things that we might expect, turning to false idols. It says specifically that they were doing evil, which is pretty significant in the range of things that you can do wrong. Evil is pretty bad, right? And then it says, again, Yahweh gave them into the hand of the refugees for 40 years. So that might be surprising if you're reading along. The word pilash, where Pilishtim, Philistines, comes from, is a word to roll in. And so the Philistines were literally, historically, refugees who were fleeing a famine, and they came to shore in the Levant, around a whole bunch of places, but including in the area that the Israelites were in. And so every time the Bible speaks about them, instead of calling them Yavanit, which means Greeks, or using some other designation, instead they're called the refugees, which is a little, thorn in the side, a little elbow to the readers of Torah, Tanakh originally, about who were God's people supposed to take care of, right? They were supposed to take care of the outsider, the orphan, the widow. The refugee is certainly included in the immigrant, the alien, the orphan, the widow, the outsider, the mumser, etc. That big list. Refugee is a big part of that. And so God handing them over to refugees is one of those a little subjugative justice moments. How are we treating those on our margins? Because God may see fit to turn that power around for some time. So anyway, that's what's happening in this introductory verse. Going on. There was one man from Tza'ara, which means either leprosy or hornets, from the family of Dan, subjugative justice. His name was Manoach, place of comfort. His woman was infertile. She had not borne children. Okay, so if we look at that lineup of names are always so significant in the text. It's a place of either leprosy or hornets. Leprosy shares a name with hornets because of the sensation of leprosy, which is terrible. But his family is this family of justice. And he himself is a place of comfort in this spiky, uncomfortable, painful place. What kind of people are we in the midst of our generation, in the midst of our era, in the midst of our place? What kind of designation would we receive if we had so meaningful of names? Speaking of names, it does say his woman was infertile. Now, I would like to call attention to the fact that she is unnamed. Tradition has named her Tselelponit. However, Leaving her unnamed might not be the text being biased and patriarchal and out of touch and not seeing women as full people, and so who cares what her name is. That's one approach. Another approach is if you were trying to tell a story to your slightly bigoted friend or a friend with a prejudice of some kind, and you were trying to tell a story about how great that person is, and kind of, stick it to them a little bit, you might, rather than using their name continually, use the part of their identity that so rankles the other person over and over, just like Jesus does when he talks about, and then the Samaritan in his parable, the Samaritan went and took the person to the it's not a hotel, to the inn, and took care of them and paid their way, right? He continually calls that person in the parable a Samaritan, because it wouldn't have been as powerful if he had been like Jim, right? It wouldn't have called attention to this marginalized figure that that community had opposition to. And so it's just possible that Tanakh, by using the word woman over and over and over, is underlining and highlighting, hey, look, this woman is central to the story. So there is a possibility for why she doesn't receive a name. And maybe it's right, maybe it's not. All right. Going on, it says, an angel of Yahweh was seen by the woman. He said to her, look here, please. You are infertile. You have borne no children. You will conceive and give birth to a son. Now, please guard yourself. Do not drink wine or anything for becoming drunk. Do not eat anything unclean, for you will look and pregnant. You will birth a son. No alteration will be over his head. The young man shall be from the belly a Nazir, which means devoted, of Elohim. He will begin to rescue Yisrael from the hand of the refugees. So for some of us, if we were this woman, God appears to you, you're able to see God, you might expect, oh, finally, I'm going to get this incredible answer that I've been waiting for. Why did this happen? What's going to go on with my future? We might be looking for all those things. And this woman does get that breakthrough that she's looking for, right? In terms of being able to have a baby. So it's not that we shouldn't expect or pray for or hope for breakthroughs in the areas that we have difficulty and challenges and suffering. And yet, the main key point of what the angel conveys to her is that her son is really the big deal. It's not that you will have a baby and then you and your husband will go and fight the armies, right? The focus is on the next generation. So how are we keeping an eye to the next generation, and rather than like the culture of the world and sometimes the church throwing javelins and arrows at each other generation and complaining about them and talking about how out of touch they are in some way or other, how rather can we be preparing the way for them and seeking to bless them and guard our own behavior that they might be more blessed, right? I think there's an invitation to that in this passage, culturally overall, but then especially if we're parents, right? Is the goal just to keep them alive day by day? Hopefully they'll grow up to be a functional adult. Or is the goal to see who it is that God is making them to be through discernment, through prayer, alongside them, and then to help cultivate and create space for that to happen? One of the two. The last thing here in this section, he says, a Nazir, he will be devoted of Elohim. He will begin to rescue Yisrael from the hand of the Plishtim. So if you don't know what a Nazir or a Nazirite is, it's a special distinction in Leviticus for men or women to take a mark upon themselves to be especially set apart as holy. The make no alterations to their head seems, at least according to tradition, to be about hair cutting. And so this angel is saying that even in utero, this baby ought to be extra set apart. Okay, next section. The woman came and said to her man, saying, a man of the Elohim came to me. His appearance was like the appearance of an angel of the Elohim, very fearful. I did not ask him where he was from or his name, nor did he declare it to me. He said to me, you, look here, you will be pregnant, you will give birth to a son. Now do not drink wine or anything for becoming drunk, nor will I eat anything unclean. For a Nazir devoted of God, the young man shall be from the womb until the day of his death. Manoach interceded to Yahweh and said, in me, my Lord, the man of Elohim whom you sent, please, he will come to us again and teach us what we will do for the young man who will be born. So I love this. It seems to be a story of a pretty great marriage, right? Equality, teaching on women doesn't mean that we have to be booing the appearance of all men and saying pish posh, bad, not as cool as us, girl power, hashtag girl boss. That's not my posture. That's not the posture of the Bible. There is rather both sides of this marriage are come together and collaborate and try to figure out what's going on. So she comes and loops in her husband, and he turns to God in prayer, which is beautiful and incredible. Treating women with their rightful respect does not require demeaning other people, right? And so her husband is welcomed into figuring out what on earth is going on and coming up with solutions. Secondly, it's interesting to note that she calls the angel of Yahweh, is what the narrator calls who appeared at the beginning of the chapter. She, the woman, calls the angel a man of the Elohim. So the Elohim is a word that is ascribed to all sorts of spiritual beings. Sometimes it's used for angel-like beings, sometimes for angels, sometimes when the text is talking about other gods. So she's trying to say it was a guy. I'm not sure who it was, but he seemed to be spiritual, right? And that takes up half of the conversation, is what even just happened here, which is very relatable, rather than being like, oh yeah, sure, an angel showed up, moving on, kind of like Gideon. Okay, but let's see what happens next. The Elohim, ding, 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 once again, heeded the voice of Manoach. The angel came again to the woman. She was sitting in the field. Manoach, her man, was not with her. The woman hurried and ran and declared to her man. She said to him, look, the man has been seen by me who came the other day to me. He arose. Manoach followed after his woman. He came to the man. He said to him, are you the man who spoke to the woman? The angel said, I am. Manoach said, now your words will come. What will be the decree regarding the young man? What will his deeds be? Okay, so if I were God, which thankfully I'm not, I might imagine God to reply, I already told you. Like, you need to have more faith, you need to have more trust. Do the words that I've commanded you and let them be upon your heart and teach them, and you're rising up and you're laying down and you're walking by the way, right? That would be what my expectation is. But Manoach in the previous section says, please show up again and tell us again. And then what happens? God does. That's his incredible patience with us, willingness to meet us where we're at, even when we have stupid questions, or like, hey, could you do that one more time? He, at least in this passage, is happy to do so, which is beautiful. We also might expect a tisk tisk to be put up against Manoach and his wife, because he's asking for a miracle, and because of the Gospels and different lines like they desired to see Jesus's signs rather than his teachings. We tend to imagine that signs are bad. And yet so often in the Bible, people are given signs and then they can ask for them again here and they see them again, right? The Psalm says, I delight to behold your marvelous works. God does not appear to be upset with Manoach, who wants to see this cool thing that his wife got to experience. So may we be people who have the chutzpah to ask for that, to say, look, I don't have it all together, and it would really help me get in the loop with my spouse if I was able to experience this amazing thing that she was able to experience. So God is gracious here, but he also shows up in specific ways in case this marriage isn't perfect. He does a few things that really spotlight the woman and her role in what's going on, right? So he doesn't show up immediately to Manoach. After Manoach prays, he appears once again to the woman, being like, this is a me and you thing, and he gets to be a part of it, right? And then there's that specific line, Manoach followed after his woman, right? It's not that he tells her, stay here, and then he runs off to the field and makes her tell him where the angel is. They go together, but she's in front there. So super interesting. All right. Next section, the angel of Yahweh said to Manoach, from all that I have said to the woman, guard it. Anything that departs from vine of wine she may not eat, wine and drink for becoming drunk, oh, that she may not drink it. Anything unclean she will not eat. All that I commanded her, she will guard it. Okay, I love this. Once again, just like we saw before, he points to the woman and her account of things and says, everything she says to do that she told you that I said, do that. What an answer. But zooming in on the concept, he says, once again, from all that I have said to the woman, guard it. God's commandments require guarding. This is a watchman word, a watchman on a wall, watching over the city, making sure that it stays safe, looking out of the wilderness, making sure that there's no enemies, no fires, etc., nothing coming. And there's an easy catchphrase nature to love God, love others. Everything's really simple, actually. And it's true when we look through that framework, that is the case. And it can be nice to say, hey, what's a really simple rendering of what is this life about? But not everything always flows exactly out of the slogan we nail on the wall. It requires figuring out a rule of life and attending to it and being careful about it, which requires work, which for some of us feels, can I just follow the spirit in the moment and not worry about it so much? With our nature, with the options of comfort and convenience and this world's systems, there are so many opportunities that if we're just running on vibes, running on what feels right in the moment, we will too often choose ourselves, our own comfort, our own convenience, our own applause over whatever it is that God has told us to do. And so establishing this rule of life and then guarding it is something that God shows up to remind the Manoach, hey, it's not just remember this kid is holy and walk it out as you see fit. It's do these very specific things, right? Okay, going on. The Manoach said to the angel of Yahweh, please, oh, that we could halt you. We will prepare a young goat before your face. The angel of Yahweh said to Manoach, though you halt me, I will not eat from your bread. If you make a burnt offering to Yahweh, you may offer the goat. For Manoach did not know that he was an angel of Yahweh. Manoach said to the angel of Yahweh, what is your name? For when your words come to pass, we will honor you. The angel of Yahweh said to him, why do you ask my name? Is it extraordinary? I love that. God speaks in riddles sometimes. He loves provoking questions that are designed to draw us in. A little bit of cheekiness from God there. Why me? Is it extraordinary? So it says, Manoach took a young goat and a gift. He offered it up upon the rock to Yahweh. The angel did an extraordinary thing while Manoach and his woman watched. It was as the flame ascended from the slaughtering place toward the heavens, the angel of Yahweh ascended in the flame of the slaughtering place. Manoach and his woman watched. They fell with their faces upon the earth. I love this. Okay, so sacrifices, right, originally were people's idea. Havel and Cain and Abel were the first people to make sacrifices. And yet, when they put in the effort to do this thing, they offer this hospitality. They say, please, won't you stay with us a little longer? We want to do something beautiful for you. The angel does something beautiful in response, right? He doesn't say, no, 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 no. I've fulfilled my checkbox, and now it's time for me to leave. He's not worried about that. Instead, they get to see another incredible thing, an extraordinary reward, and something that will serve to bolster their faith during the difficult time of raising their son. Okay, last section here. It says, when the angel of Yahweh was not seen again by Manoach and his wife, then Manoach knew that he was an angel of Yahweh. Manoach said to his wife, certainly we are going to die because we have seen Elohim. His woman said to him, if Yahweh delighted in killing us, why would he have taken from our hands a burnt offering and a gift? Why would he have allowed us to see all these things? Why at this time would he have made us heed all of these things? So she's guided, she's a great theologian here, by what God has already done in their story, not by fearful logic, right? Logic says, I've heard somewhere that nobody can see the face of God, and it seems like this person is probably God because they ascended in a flame of fire. That seems like a God thing to do. Therefore, we are going to die. And instead, she pays attention to the kindness, the generosity, the patronage that this angel representing God has already extended to them, and says, no, if this is who God is, then that's who he will continue to be, and he's not going to kill us if he's just given us this mission to walk out. May we follow the theology of Tselelponit rather than the rationalizing all of our theology up in a line and getting to whatever endpoint seems the most fretful. Last thing here, the woman birthed a son. She called his name Shimshon, or son man. Samson, by the way. The young man became great. Yahweh blessed him. The spirit of Yahweh began to beat within him, like the hoofbeats of a horse, and Machna of Dan between Sarah and Eshtel. Okay, so what is our invitation from this morning? In this wild and cool story, what are our takeaways? So it's a lot of stuff. So here's a couple we can go home with. Number one, if you have a partner, when you can, bring your partner into your experience of God with you. Sometimes that's the scariest thing to do because it's the person who really knows us and will call out our BS. But how are we supposed to be partnered? How are we supposed to be one household moving toward the same goal if we're not sharing what God is doing within us and what God is calling us toward with the person that we are walking through life with, right? So bring in your spouse and help them, ask them to help you be excited about and pray into the things that God is doing in your life and heart. That sounds like a conversation. Number two, invitation. Trust that God likes to show up and answer our stupid questions. So try asking. Sometimes we have all of these questions either from traumatic experiences or deconstruction or just a regular life with no big ups and downs, but we still have questions for God. But sometimes we sit on them or we say, well, these are my questions and that's why I'm not sure that I'm a XYZ. In this story, we see people saying, I don't even have more of a question. I just want to hear it again. And they ask it anyway. And God shows up and extrapolates and tells it to them again. And they get to have this crazy experience of God and see these miracles that they never would have had if they had never asked. So ask our stupid questions, show up, and bring them to God, and don't sit on them or wait for someone in your community to give you the answer, or just say, these questions are who I am now. Bring them to God. Do it. He'll show up. Number three, in one way or another, number three invitation is for us to notice that God cares more about rescuing people than us getting our theology right. There's this undertone in this whole chapter of Manoach and his woman going back and forth. Tselelponit says, oh, I think it was a man of the Elohim. And then later Manoach is like, no, it was definitely God. They're trying to figure out what's going on, which is very human and relatable. And yet the angel doesn't care. God does not get worked up about, no, you need to know exactly who this is. Here's the spiritual hierarchy of all these different beings and where this one fits in. God is not interested in helping them through that, them being right about whether it's even God or not, which feels like a pretty defining big question. God's not worried about that. He's worried about them setting aside this devoted baby to be toward God, holy, set apart before God, in order that baby who would grow up would be able to begin to rescue Yisrael. That's his concern. And so that can be a comfort to us to know that God cares about moving and saving us and moving the plot forward of putting this world back together and accomplishing healing and light and defeat of darkness, all the things that God is up to. And that's what he's concerned about, not whether we get this exact theological detail nailed on the head. Number 4, the stuff that we do know we're supposed to do. Maybe you have all these questions. Maybe you've asked them. You haven't heard an answer yet. What are we supposed to do? We're stalled in our car, or we're stuck in neutral. Take what you do know that you're supposed to do, even if it's as simple as love God and love people, and then do that. He tells us to guard the things that he has commanded us to do. So we might not have the whole lay of the land and know exactly which way everything's going to turn out and the answer to all of our questions, but we do know a couple things, right? Stay true to those couple things. Guard those couple things. Discipline your life around those couple things. The faithfulness of a mustard seed can move a mountain, right? Shimshon's family was not told what exactly it was that Shimshon would do. And they weren't told why it would take another 40 years for their people to escape this rule from the hand of their frequent enemy. They're not told why God has chosen this particular time and this particular discipline and etc. But they are told what they ought to do in their role in the story that God is doing in the world. We have also been told by Jesus and throughout the whole of the Bible the ways that we ought to be living our lives. And so even when we have questions, it might be atonement theology, it might be the hot button political or theological topics of the day, but we do know how we are supposed to walk. And so let's attend to that, and more attend to it. Let's guard it. Shamar it. So all of our unanswered questions, we have some invitations. What were they all? If you have a partner, bring him in. Trust that God likes to show up and ask and answer your questions, so do so. God cares more about rescuing people than getting our theology right. And so trust in that, rejoice in that, feel secure in that. And number 4, guard the things that we have been told to do, rather than quibbling about, again, the big theological scope of the universe. You can spend time working on that. That's not bad, but just don't forget to guard the things that we do know, right? So I'm going to pray on all of that because I need help doing all of these things, and perhaps you do too. So here we go. God, I thank you that this is who you are, that you include equal partnerships, giving respecting dignity to both players in this game. Both the husband and the wife are brought into this beautiful thing that you're doing in their world. And so I pray that we would walk out that modeling, that we would include one another in the things that you are doing, even when it's scary, even when it's vulnerable, even when it feels like cringy. I pray that you would be with us in that and build up our marriages through it upon you. I pray that we would trust you with our silly questions, that we would trust that you care about putting the world back together more than judging us for not being sure about X, Y, or Z. I pray that we would ask the things that we've been marinating on. Sometimes we forget, even when we feel like we're being holy by thinking through a lot. I pray that we would bring it to you and that you would give us answers with expedience and clarity in a way that would settle our soul. And I pray that you would enable us to be strategic and smart about the things that you have given us to guard, that we would be able to underline them and say, I don't know about this, but I do know that I'm supposed to seek justice and walk humbly with you, whatever that looks like for us. I pray that you would bring those out, call them out within our souls, and then give us the intensity as an individual, as families, as communities, to say, no, these things we are going to do. So I pray that you would be with us, that you would protect us from the temptation to excuse our different behavior, our different excuses that come up. Say, oh, well, that time I didn't actually need to walk humbly, because I pray that your Spirit would speak to us loudly and that we would be conformed into your image more and more, day by day, moment by moment, glory to glory. Pray all these things in your name, Jesus. Amen. All right, Refuge Church, near and far. If you haven't begun to do so already, please consider giving at the tab at refugepullman.com. It says give. You can choose one-time gifts. You can choose monthly gifts, weekly gifts, yearly gifts, etc. We would be so blessed by that and continuing to be able to put out this content into the world and to stay alive. So there's that. If you would like to join online chat, even though it's not in vogue anymore now that COVID's gone away, you can find that form to join us online at refugepullman.com as well. Have a wonderful week. Bye.